I've been thinking about making this video for a long time. Now that these kinds of issues have gotten a bit bigger, I've decided to actually address them. You might know this, or you might not. The power scaling community is an internet community that's heavily criticized and has a hate base. So much so that when you search for power scaling on YouTube, things like power scaling is cringe even appear in search results. This is so bad that even fandoms like Dandy's World and Sprunky haven't received this much criticism and hate base. In this video, I'll explain in detail why the power scaling community isn't cringe or stupid. I'll also respond to and refute many of the defenses and arguments offered by power scaling critics. There might be a few videos in the thumbnail, but the arguments presented in all anti-power scaling videos are almost always the same. Let's get started. First, I'll demonstrate in detail that the power scaling community isn't cringe, toxic, or stupid. Then, I'll respond to the arguments presented by power scaling opponents. First of all, scaling fictional characters isn't simple. Understanding and grasping who is more powerful is a bit of a tedious task. This requires significant time, intelligence, and logic, which are more relevant for characters below the planetary level, while higher levels are much more serious. Knowing and understanding the tier system is quite difficult, just like remembering how religious rituals are performed. Any game or fictional universe can be easily grasped, and even if a newcomer is confused, they can easily learn it in a few days. But the tiering system is anything but. To understand the tiering system, especially the god levels, it takes weeks, even months, to delve into it. It's not just about reading the level descriptions, it also requires understanding the background and terminology, for example, omnipotent, meta-qualitative, possible worlds, and dozens of similar concepts. In other words, it's literally impossible for someone who knows the tiering system and can compare fictional characters to be stupid. Knowing such things necessarily makes a power scaler knowledgeable. Power scalers understand complex things like apophatic theology, cardinals, logical fallacies, philosophical terminology, and multiverse types. Most people don't know these things. Ask any Sprunky, Geometry Dash, Anthony, or Doors fan about the wooden cardinal, they won't even know it exists. Ask an CCP scaler or WAD scaler about the any-cardinal. They'll explain it. These are simpler examples. There are almost no internet communities that understand theoretical infinities beyond infinity. In fact, it wouldn't be wrong to call it the only power scaling community. Apart from the power scaling community, even the communities that know beyond infinity are not fully internet communities, but official academic and digital institutions. Power scalers spend a lot of time scaling characters, watching, reading, and searching for scans. For example, to scale self-reference engine, you have to find the free self-reference engine PDF and read it in its entirety, which is a significant amount of time. Or to scale Massive-verse, they read tons of novels, review games, and research additional information. There are universes that are very difficult to scale. So, we understand that the power scaling community is the most dedicated and hardworking internet community. The power scaling community is more diligent than any other fandom. Cringe is subjective and cannot be proven. If it were, it would be both a crime and scientific knowledge. However, let's assume cringe is objective and continue. In this case, power scaling still can't be cringe because, logically speaking, there's nothing cringe about power scaling. While some fictional universes might have cringe aspects, power scaling never has and can never have cringe. Furthermore, power scaling is not just a community, it's also a discipline. Those that are disciplines cannot be cringe. In other words, claiming power scaling is cringe is like claiming that geology, sociology, and theology are cringe. As for toxicity, it's the same as cringe. Let's assume toxicity is definitive and provable. But even then, the power scaling community isn't toxic. There's nothing toxic about it. The point of power scaling is to examine, compare, discuss, and share. These events are not toxic. Analyzing is not toxic. Comparing is not toxic. Discussing is not toxic. and sharing is not toxic. Those who claim it's toxic simply argue that some power scalers exaggerate certain characters, but that's not even a proper argument. People who exaggerate certain characters, like alien-xaliciver-phosphate-4-verfafov and anti-spiral-safosync, are generally trolls, and judging by their behavior, you'll see they're not serious. Of course, there are serious people, but they act that way because of a misunderstanding. In other words, they've made some mistakes, and there aren't many of them. So criticizing power scaling by looking at them falls into the fallacy of hasty generalization. Power scaling is serious, and power scalers can grasp topics even university students struggle with. Some people claim that power scalers don't know math, yet many power scalers even know mathematical theories. Some people claim that power scalers don't understand logic and philosophy, but most power scalers, especially those interested in godlike characters, understand philosophy and logic very well. In fact, to understand those stronger than height 3A, you need a good understanding of not only mathematics, but also philosophy and logic. In other words, the power scaling community is more knowledgeable, more diligent, and more equipped than any other fandom. If you're still going to claim that power scaling is cringe or toxic, you have to admit that all my fictional universes, internet communities, and fandoms are cringe and toxic, because it's been proven that the power scaling community is not bad at anything. The claim that power scalers are toxic, cringe, or stupid has been debunked. Now, we'll respond to and refute the arguments presented by those opposing power scaling. Although there are only a few videos in the thumbnail, the arguments in all of them, videos criticizing power scaling are very similar, even identical. Some videos offer different defenses, and I've included them in the list. Now, it's time to respond. 1. Authors don't care about power scaling. According to this argument, writers don't care about the powers of their own universes. They don't care about the scaling of a fictional character or universe. This may seem logical, but it's quite flawed. First of all, this isn't true for every writer. Some writers, like Lionel Suggs, care deeply about the powers of the universe and strive to make it as powerful as possible. Some simply strive to make it powerful. Some don't try to make it powerful, but enjoy the scaling of universes. Just because writers aren't interested in power scaling doesn't mean it can't be done. Authors' actions don't change fan behavior. They can scale powers, take personality tests, or come up with political messages. Fans can do whatever they want, and it's not unreasonable for power scalers to analyze fictional characters. 2. Favoritism. According to this argument, many power scalers are trying to make their favorite fictional characters seem like the most powerful ones. While this is partially true, there are many errors and inaccuracies. First of all, yes, there are such power scalers, but they don't represent the entire population, and it's wrong to make unnecessary generalizations. Most power scalers proceed with logic and are interested in scaling. Wiz edits are about scaling, not love. So, those making this argument likely don't understand the power scaling community well enough. Yes, some power scalers conflate love with scaling, but most people don't do this. Sometimes they don't even realize they're making a mistake, or they're trolling. 3. Who care? According to this argument, no one cares, or very few people care. Which fictional character is stronger? It's a very weak, flawed, and contradictory argument. If power scalers are the first to delve into this topic, they've already emerged as the ones who care. If you ask who else is interested, it's those who love that character, those who are curious, those who enjoy the challenge, and those who enjoy comparison. The power scaling community has grown by attracting people's attention. Humans are already creatures capable of being attracted to powerful people. A connection is formed with fictional characters. Power scaling combines both of these elements, which is why it has been so effective and grown. 4. Whatever authors say, that character wins. It can be called the most popular argument. According to this argument, only the author decides which fictional character is strong. While this sentence is partially true, it's also quite flawed and misunderstood. It only applies to their own universe. It can't affect other universes. Furthermore, the author doesn't necessarily understand power scaling. Some authors have never even heard of power scaling. Furthermore, it's wrong to claim that this argument is absolutely true and valid for every situation. This is called the appeal to authority fallacy. Just because someone said it doesn't mean it's clear and true. If the author of this argument had said the opposite, would that sentence be true? The author can only decide which fictional characters are stronger within their own universe. However, if they provide no information and contradict themselves, fanon, theories, and interpretations emerge. If this argument were true, then all fictional characters would be the strongest. Furthermore, this argument contradicts the first argument because the first argument claims that the authors don't care about the powers of fictional characters, while this argument claims that the author decides which fictional characters are the strongest. This is where the contradiction begins. If the author states or explains which fictional characters are powerful, they are already power scaling. It is the power scaler's job to analyze which fictional characters are powerful. Therefore, this argument only applies to their own fictional universe, not to the entirety of fiction. 5. Some stats are not correct. This is a very weak argument. According to this argument, some scales are flawed and wrong, which is why the power scaling community is cringe-worthy, and whatever. They haven't just cursed. They've said everything else. First of all, this is a very flawed idea. This is called the hasty generalization fallacy. The fact that some scales and information are wrong doesn't make all of power scaling wrong. Most power scaling information is accurate and proven. Those who present this argument have tried to defend themselves with empty examples, but they've failed. Again, they've made a pointless generalization. 6. Rock beats scissor. Scissor beats paper. Paper beats rock. Logic. This argument is quite common. According to it, some characters defeat each other, and the strongest is uncertain. For example, character A defeats character B. Character B defeats character C. But character C defeats character A. These kinds of things are used to try to show that power scaling is flawed. But it's not power scaling that's flawed. It's the argument itself. Just because some characters' powers change like this doesn't necessarily they can't be scaled or tiered. Fictional characters can be scaled, which isn't an obstacle. Perhaps the strongest can be determined by tiering, but it can't change. This doesn't make power scaling seem completely bad. 7. Fictional characters are not made for power scaling. This is an argument some people frequently make, and it's flawed and incorrect. The purpose of a fictional universe doesn't mean it can't be used for anything else. For example, a fictional universe might be created to critique something in the real world, but that doesn't preclude it from being scaled, examined, and enjoyed. If a fictional universe exists, fans can do whatever they want: scale, analyze, personalities, or simply watch. But what if it's the other way around? If a fictional universe were created purely for the sake of squandering, would scaling be mandatory? No. That's why. The fact that a fictional universe isn't meant to be power scaling doesn't mean it can't be scaled, or that scaling would be unreasonable. Therefore, this argument is flawed. People can freely scale any fictional universe they choose. Some people might not be interested in writing, or they might be interested in both at once. 8. Power scaling is so hard. This is the weakest and most absurd argument I've ever seen. They're trying to discredit power scaling by saying it's incredibly difficult to do, that it's difficult to study everything, that it takes time, and so on. This is a completely flawed and misguided argument. First of all, just because a field is difficult doesn't make it bad. Just because power scaling is difficult doesn't make power scalers bad. On the contrary, it shows the hard work of the power scaling community. Scaling can be difficult in some cases, of course, but it shows that power scaling is a disciplined and hard-working field. They're trying to make power scaling seem pointless because it's difficult. But this argument is at the level of a kindergartner. Yes, I've answered every anti-power scaling argument I know of accurately and in detail. There are probably others I haven't seen or answered yet, but they're likely sub-branches of these. Therefore, the criticism and hatred directed at the power scaling community is very flawed and misguided. Power scaling opponents have targeted the wrong community. I hope you've learned, enjoyed, and felt good about yourself. My advice to power scalers: relax. You're not bad. Don't be afraid to make competitive edits or review. You're good. Power scaling isn't a bad community. In fact, it's good in many ways. My advice to power scaling opponents: don't target and disparage the power scaling community. The power scaling community isn't like popular online fandoms. It's a very different community. Either reinforce or amplify your own arguments, or don't try to discredit power scaling. Thank you to both parties who watched this video.